So how does a single government decision manage to throw an entire nation into chaos? Today, we're diving deep into Nepal's digital uprising. It's a story of what happens when you pull the plug on social media and spark a real-life revolution on the streets. And it's a story that's probably best told in the protesters' own words.
This right here, this was the slogan you heard everywhere. The final revolution, we are punching up. Now, that's way more than just a catchy phrase. It's a powerful declaration from a generation that felt completely pushed to the edge, deciding to fight back against a system they felt was just rigged against them. So, what got them to that point?
Well, it didn't start with a bang, but with a click. A digital blackout. The one single event that lit this massive firestorm across the country was a sudden, sweeping ban on the very tools millions of people were using every single day to talk, to work, to just live their lives.
And the blackout itself, the sheer scope of it was just staggering. The government didn't just go after a few apps. They tried to hit the mute button on the entire country, basically overnight.
Think about this. On the night of September 4th, 2025, it wasn't just one or two platforms that suddenly stopped working, it was 26. The government blocked access to 26 different social media platforms, saying they hadn't met some new registration rules. The scale of this was just wow. And it was immediate.
And look, we're not talking about some obscure apps that nobody's ever heard of. The ban cut off the country's digital lifeline. Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, gone. That's how families connect. X, where people get their news, gone. Even LinkedIn, for people trying to find jobs. The entire digital town square just vanished in a puff of smoke.
But here's the thing. The government's big move didn't create silence. Oh no, it created an absolute uproar. A whole generation, feeling like their voice and their future were being erased, started to protest, and it was the country's youth leading the charge.
And this became their rallying cry. Wake up, Gen Z. Viral campaigns started spreading like wildfire on the networks they could still access, and all that online anger quickly turned into a physical movement. For a lot of people, this wasn't just another protest. It felt like a generational awakening. And that awakening? It spilled onto the streets, and it escalated with terrifying speed. The whole movement transformed, moving from online hashtags to people needing hard helmets to protect themselves from violent clashes. Just look at this timeline. It shows you just how fast everything went downhill. September 4th, the ban is imposed. By the very next day, protests are kicking off all over the country. And then, just 4 days after the ban, on September 8th, the situation turns deadly. That's when the government brings in curfews and even deploys the army. The confrontation was just incredibly lopsided. On one side, you had protesters armed with slogans and hashtags. And on the other side, the state was responding with tear gas, water cannons, and eventually rubber bullets, and even live ammunition. The contrast is just stark and, honestly, pretty brutal. And of course, a confrontation like that comes at a devastating human cost. While it's always hard to get exact figures in the middle of chaos, reports indicate that somewhere between 11 and 17 people were killed across the country. Over 100 more were injured. A truly tragic price to pay for a protest that started online. Okay, but to really understand what happened here, you have to realize this was never just about a social media ban. The ban, that was just the spark that lit a much bigger fire. And the fuel for that fire, it had been piling up for years.
A single hashtag really captured all that deep-seated anger. Hashtag #NepoBaby. It became this incredibly powerful symbol for the protesters, taking aim at what they see as a system of nepotism and elitism. A system where the children of the political class get all these privileges and opportunities that the average person can only dream of. So you can see it laid out here, right? The social media ban was just the spark. The real fuel was years of simmering frustration. We're talking about systemic corruption, that whole hashtag #NepoBaby culture, widespread economic struggles, and this growing fear of digital suppression. The ban was just the final straw.
Which, brings us to the biggest question of all. What does this mean for the future? This is about so much more than just getting access to your apps back. This is a fight for the very foundations of democracy and freedom of expression in Nepal. This slogan, used by journalists who are also protesting, really gets to the heart of the issue. When the press itself is out on the streets warning that democracy is being hacked, that tells you this is a crisis that goes way beyond a simple policy disagreement. They see this ban as a terrifying precedent for silencing any and all dissent.
And so, this whole story leaves us with a question. And it's not just a question for Nepal, it's for all of us. It really highlights a new frontline in the global fight for civil rights. When a government can silence millions of voices with a single switch, what really is the future of protest in our digital age?